Hi, I'm Janice Gray, and I'm just going to summarize Chapter 8 of Johnson's book, Radical Behavior for ABA Practitioners. Chapter 8, the title is Ethics, Rights, and Values Without the Heat. The first part of the chapter talks about ethics and what ethics is. Ethics has to do with the behavior that occurs within a community. And the behavior, it defines how people interact with each other. And what the book is saying is that things that happen, the contingencies, events that happen influence the ethics of that community. It influences how we treat each other. It influences other important issues in the community, such as it can do with pets, how you treat your pets. It could have to do with how you treat the environment, how you take care of the environment. Community can be defined also not just like people in your neighborhood, people in your county, but it could be people in your family. If you're at a certain job, workplace, the people who work in your specific workplace. The next section in the book talks about rights, and it defines rights and ethics both as being verbal behavior. Now, rights, like I said, is considered a verbal behavior. You talk about the right when you're talking about avoiding a punishment or avoiding or obtaining a reinforcement. A right statement is controlling tendency. The author says, for example, he gave the example, if you say you have the right to go to the movies and not be disturbed by others, like who are texting, then what you're saying is that there's something that they don't get to do, like text in the movie or talk on the phone in the movies. Rights, they're statements that shouldn't be viewed as superiors over other statements. Like your right is not above somebody else's right. They can be matched by a statement that is contrary. And the author gave an example, maybe like if you talk about your right to bear arms, it may infringe upon someone else's right to feel safe. He talks about rights coming from a community, and how we go through life experiences or contingencies, and the community defines the rights of the people who live there. They support the rights, and so that's how your rights are developed. The next part of the chapter talks about values, which is also verbal behavior. The description or the identity of the appropriate behavior that is supported by the community. And it can be confused with rights because they're closely related. They both refer to the acceptable behavior in a community. They both have preferred ways of behaving. They reinforce important behaviors conflicting with the cause and the adverse outcomes. Also, it involves statements that describe the behavior which could lead to certain types of consequences, and it depends on the ethics of the community. The final part of this chapter is called Taking the Heat Out of the Arguments. And this section is referring to having a discussion about rights and values, and if you take the behavior approach to values and rights. And you look at the question whether science can't answer the question about good or bad behavior, what's right or what's wrong, or what you should do and what you shouldn't do. If you're coming from a behavior perspective, then when you say you ought to do something or you should do something, those statements are reinforcing or punishing a behavior in different types of situations. And the chapter kind of gives you an overview of how to have a discussion without discussion turning into a heated argument. And the first thing it tells you to do is that you say that value statements, there are learned behaviors. You give an example of how when you learn to talk, that you learn to talk because you're in a community that talks, and you focus on that. And once people start believing that, okay, learning to talk is a verbal behavior is learned, and then you have everybody agreeing, start to change their minds and have everybody start to agree that values and rights are also a verbal behavior that is learned in the community and supported by the community. Okay, I have 2 questions for discussion. The first question, I want you to pick and describe a community in your life and then discuss how that community, has influenced the way that people act or treat each other. Like, for example, I've chosen the community that I live in, the county and the neighborhood that I live in. In the county that I live in, there is an ordinance that you have to keep your dog on a leash. But of course, the police are not always there looking and arresting people who are not, or passing out tickets. So I've noticed since I've moved into this neighborhood a couple of years ago that everybody literally follows that rule. People walk their dogs on a leash. They can run in with their dogs on a leash. You don't walk through the neighborhood and see, people letting their dogs run out, and dogs don't chase you as you're walking down the neighborhood or chase your car. So, and you're really frowned upon in the neighborhood if you are that person who lets their dog run loose. So, I think the way the community interacts and treats each other has really influenced people following that rule. Like, you have the right to walk down the neighborhood street without being chased by a dog, and you have that right to allow your children to play outside or ride the bicycle up and down the streets without dogs running after them. The second question part of this is just to choose another community that's in your life and discuss a value, right, or ethic. For example, another community in my life would be my school community. I'm a teacher, and so my community are the teachers that I work with, grades kindergarten through 5th grade. Even though it's not a rule in the building, teachers. I work with a lot of women teachers who have children, and there are many times that daycares may call the teacher and say their child is sick with a fever. They got to come pick them up. They have to leave right away. They may not have a means of anyone else picking up their child. So, it's understood. It's not a rule. It's just understood, like, how we treat each other. Everybody values parenting and parents and the responsibility that parents have. And we all pull together. Like, when someone has to leave, if there are no subs and there's not a extra instructional assistant to go inside of that classroom, then like everybody gets a couple of kids. And so out of the blue, you may have a planned lesson, but they may say to you, okay, I need you to take 2 second graders because their teacher has to leave. And nobody says no. Nobody would even frown upon that because it can happen to anyone. An emergency may come up and you may have to leave, but everybody is supportive of each other, and our community has basically defined that as just a way that we support each other, and if we need to take kids in our classroom at short notice, that it is done. Thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed it and look forward to reading your comments. Thank you.